Now let me briefly explain some of the details of this investigation, which brings us here today. On Saturday, August 6, 2016, at approximately 2 p.m., Sinking Spring Borough Police Department officers were detailed to 51 Winding Brook Drive, Sinking Spring, to check on the welfare of the Short family. They had responded there based upon Megan Short's mother contacting Berks County Communications Center for police assistance. She had reported that Megan failed to appear for a prearranged lunch date with her at noon, which caused her concern. The mother unsuccessfully attempted to contact Megan via cell phone and house phone. Additionally, she explained that Megan and her husband had been involved in some domestic issues. Officers from the Sinking Spring Police Department and Bern Township Police Departments arrived and attempted to make contact with any of the occupants at 51 Winding Brook Drive. They were unsuccessful in getting an answer. Officers had to make forcible entry into the home through a rear kitchen window. Once inside the home, the officers discovered 5 deceased individuals and a deceased dog. These bodies were located in the living room area of the residence, all with apparent gunshot wounds. A handgun was discovered next to one of the individuals who was deceased. That individual was later identified as Mark Jason Short, Sr. During the search, the officers discovered a handwritten note on a dining room table, which appeared to be a murder-suicide note. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on in this investigation. The officers who initially arrived on the scene secured the scene and contacted my detective unit to investigate this incident, and my unit, the Berks County detectives, took over the investigation. Later that evening at approximately 6:07, Berks County Deputy Coroner Joel Bonilla pronounced all 5 individuals deceased. Detectives from my office obtained a search warrant to investigate the crime scene. As a result of the search warrant, several items were seized, some of which required forensic analysis. In the days that followed, detectives from my office were piecing together the evidence that was found. At no time did we want to jump to any conclusions. During this investigation, we learned that Megan and Mark Short were having some domestic marital problems, and they were in the process of separation. We learned that in early June, security from a hotel in Philadelphia was called for a domestic dispute in a room where Mark and Megan Short were staying for the evening. On July 18th, the Sinking Spring Police Department responded to a domestic dispute at the Shorts' home. As a result of responding to that address, no charges were filed, no physical injuries were found, and Mark Short had left the premises prior to the police arrival. I would again, though, notify you that the Sinking Spring Police Department did at that time advise Megan Short how to get a protection from abuse order, but she chose not to. On July 19th, 2016, Mark Short purchased a .38 caliber 5-shot revolver handgun and a stock of ammunition from a licensed gun dealership in Lancaster County. On July 25th, Megan Short leased an apartment in Yardley, Pennsylvania. Mark Short was devoted at his place of employment on August 1st. August 5th, Mark Short took all three of their children to Hershey Park. On August 5th, at approximately 7:30 p.m., a neighbor observed Megan Short park her car in the driveway of her residence, 51 Winding Brook Drive, directly behind her husband's parked vehicle. She, at approximately 11:30 that evening, had a communication from her Facebook page. On August 6th, Megan Short was planning on moving her to a new apartment that morning. Megan's mother and family members waited for Megan's arrival at her new apartment to help her move her belongings inside. Mark Short supposedly, during our investigation, we learned that he was going to rent a moving van to help his wife move to her new apartment. On August 6th, family member makes a telephone call to one of Megan's Short's neighbors to check and see if Megan is home. The neighbor goes to the home and is unsuccessful in making contact with anyone from inside the residence. The neighbor did report that she observed both vehicles parked in the driveway. Again, then, shortly thereafter, Megan Short's mother contacted the Sinking Spring Police Department. On August 8th, 2016, an autopsy of Mark Short was conducted by Dr. Neil Hoffman from the Department of Pathology of the Reading Police Department. He concluded that Mark Short died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. There were no other autopsies performed on any of the other individuals involved in this incident. Detectives from my forensic division processed the affected area of the crime scene. 5 empty .38 caliber casings were found in the basement family room in close proximity to the stock of ammunition. During the forensic investigation, detectives from my office lifted a latent fingerprint on a live round from the gun recovered next to Mark Short. That fingerprint was positively identified as a fingerprint of Mark Short. This round of ammunition was placed in the gun after the first 5 rounds were fired and the gun was reloaded. The sales slip to Mark Short for the .38 caliber handgun and ammunition was found and seized from the home. We have determined that this was a lawful transaction, a lawful purchase of a firearm by Mark Short. The suicide letter was processed for handwriting analysis by the Pennsylvania State Police. The result of that analysis was positively identified as the handwriting of Mark Short. We were able to determine that this suicide letter was written most likely after the children and the wife and the dog was killed. Some of the information contained in the suicide letter was an admission that he purchased the gun and committed the homicides. All of the evidence processed and information learned throughout the investigations support the conclusion that Mark Short committed the homicide of his wife, 3 children, and the family dog. He then turned the gun on himself and took his own life. This was a very, very unfortunate incident. I don't know that anything can be learned other than when leaving an abusive relationship, it's often a very dangerous time for a victim. So we urge anyone who's in a similar situation to develop a safety plan and contact their local domestic violence agency for assistance. We want to express our deepest sympathy to all the family members affected by this tragedy. Our heartfelt thoughts and prayers go out to them during this difficult time. I want to thank the dedicated work of all the police that responded to this scene, processed the scene, conducted this investigation. We weren't going to jump to any conclusions, and we did not. We thoroughly investigated this to make sure we got it right.